This is true, and it happened to me about 16 years ago. I've rarely spoke of it, and I don't think my wife even knows about it. Well, I grew up in San Diego, California. I lived on a ranch from the time I was 3 until my early 20s. I've seen many things, and I generally don't talk about them because of how strange even I think they are. I've one story that I remember very clearly though. I was in high school, and just so you know, I've never been into drugs, and I didn't drink until after high school. My experience happened while sober. One winter night it was windy and generally cold. San Diego cold was probably in the 50s. I was the only person home. I'd stayed up watching movies. Eventually, I got bored and decided to get ready to go to bed. As I was walking from the bathroom to my room, I noticed all the downstairs lights were on, including the outside lights and the light in the pool. I did think this was odd, but I didn't think twice to go and shut them off. I went downstairs and turned off the house alarm. I had to go outside to shut off the light for the pool and the driveway lights. I re-entered the house, rearmed the system, turned off all the lights again, then I went up the stairs to go to bed. I turned off my light in my room, and as I did, the driveway lights outside turned on. This not being the first weird thing to ever happen to me, I said this is bullshit. I went downstairs in the dark, and as I stepped off the stairs, the kitchen light turned on. I turned off the alarm first and went outside to shut off the driveway lights. As I shut the switch off, I said, "Don't do it again." I went back inside, rearmed the system, and then went to the kitchen where those lights were on. I shut them off and then made sure nobody was home. They weren't, and I went back to my room. Back in my room and the house is in total darkness. I was standing in my doorway making sure the lights were really off. I shut my door and got in bed. As I grabbed the blankets, I noticed the hall light was now on. I could see the lights coming from underneath my door. I didn't think that this was too much of a burden because the switch was just outside my room. I was kneeling on the end of my bed and I opened my door. I leaned around the corner and I flipped the switch off. As I did, there was a light from the top of the stairs. The light was bluish in color and not overwhelmingly bright. Down the hall, maybe 8 to 10 feet from me, was an American Indian standing in full dress, standing very tall and very proud. The bluish light was coming from a weird fog he had around him. His arms were crossed and one fist was clenched and the other had a hatchet. I couldn't see through him. It was like he was really there. I shut my door, waited a few minutes, maybe a lot of minutes. Point is, I went back out there. I rechecked every closet, under every bed, all the bathrooms, and nobody was in this house except me. Like I said, this wasn't the only weird thing that I've seen or experienced. Still, to this day, I can remember the details of the Indian. My name is Don, and I'm writing about experiences that happened over a 26-year period at Mary Knoll Avenue, Lindsay, Ontario. It was half of a duplex. I moved into the place with my family in November 1979 and felt that there was something not quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it, so to speak. Shadows seen from the side of my eyes is all that I seem to see, but some experiences of friends who met each other at my house over the years had seen and convinced me something was going on. It got so that kids to this day on Mary Knoll Avenue talked about the haunted house at the bottom of Mary Knoll across from the park. To be honest, I don't know if the lady who moved in last year in July of 2004 has experienced anything or not, but I'm guessing she might have. We got settled in, and my friend Sandra came over and stayed overnight, and she told me the next morning she was watching TV, and from the corner of the living room, she saw a wraith who she described as approximately 16 years old and Indian, in a white buckskin outfit, and very pretty. The wraith seemed to communicate with Sandra, but couldn't quite get through, yet Sandra felt she was trying to let her know she meant no harm. Lights would turn themselves on when no one was in the house, and even I was standing or sitting outside having coffee in a nice summer night. Another friend also named Sandra came over with her husband Albert, and they both witnessed my cable box, old kind with wire attached, turn the TV on and the channels change on their own. It had a lever, which you pushed up or down to get the stations. I took it back to the cable company where I had rented it from and told them it kept changing stations on me. You can imagine the reactions when I told them what it was doing. That was in the early 1980s. Albert told me that I was living in what was known as the French Indian Village. He would know about it as he was Indian from Curve Lake and lived in Lindsay for a long time. Albert also felt something was there. He said the Indian Village was approximately from Sakaga River to just past the Weldon High School and from King Street to Hillside Drive. In 1981, a girl by the name of Pam babysat for me on Wednesdays when I went to meetings at the church, and one day I came home to a note that said she took the kids to her place to sit as she was scared. I went over and she told me she heard heavy footsteps coming up from my basement stairs, and then the basement door seemed to breathe in and out, and she was petrified with fear of what was happening and got the kids out of the house and took them up to her place. My neighbor Pat told me of feeling someone touching her toes while she was sleeping, and of a dream her sister had of an Indian girl about 16 in a white buckskin dress coming through the wall between my bathroom and the second bedroom upstairs. Her sister knew nothing about what had been going on in my home, yet described the same girl that Sandra did. Margaret and her son Bert and her daughter Ellen was visiting me this one time in spring of 1982 or 3, I think it was, and my little parakeet in his cage on its tripod was with us, and Margaret was enjoying his chirps when the tripod suddenly lifted up in front of us and gently set the cage onto the floor. My white cat Pinky looked through the stairway uprights and meowed. I think she told me see I didn't do it. As for the week before, I had blamed her for the cage being knocked over onto the floor. I guess I was proved wrong. Elle gave Margaret my little parakeet, and she took him home with her across the river. My husband Everett had strange things happen to him while in the basement. Stuff disappearing and being poked in the waist while sitting at his little table in the far corner of the basement, once in a while being pushed on the stairs going up to the second floor. He thought he was just clumsy or something, but Pat's son Keith, who was about 9 or so, had the same experience of being pushed down the stairs, and Margaret was pushed into the hallway wall on the main floor. My husband also seen people come across the lawn or come in before they really did. Once I came in, and he asked me where the heavy lady was who was walking beside me coming up the driveway, and I didn't know who or what he was talking about. He often saw a shadowy child coming and going up the stairs. About 1992 or 3, my neighbor and a friend moved out, and a lady by the name of Penny moved in, and a few days later she came over and said I may think she was crazy, but she kept seeing Indian ghosts floating around, and some had slit throats. She felt it very weird, and didn't think I believed her, but was surprised when I did, as she told me the stuff that other people had over the years. I'd made it a point not to tell anyone new of what I heard unless they asked. Rob and Jen moved in next door to me in 1998, and one day, as Jen and the children were at my place helping me sort out some toys that I was giving away, and Rob came home and went into their place. A few minutes later, he came over and looked in my window, then came in with a very strange look on his face. He said he thought he saw Jen sitting on the sofa when he backed his truck in and went in to see no one was there. The weird thing was, the TV was set to APTN, and a show about Indian life was on. In 1999, he heard drums and smelled smoke, and being curious, looked out his bathroom window and saw a long home and what seemed to be an Indian campsite. His son Chris came up from Osho on March 8, 2001, and had a new digital camera with which he took some pics on the Rainbow Bridge and of his sister in her room. When they were downloaded into the CPU, he was shocked. The one picture had a startling revelation. It was a foggy illusion of a picture of a wolf head in the smoke. My friends new and old have talked over their experiences with each other when they were introduced to each other and found their experiences were somewhat similar. I lived in the housing unit from November 1989 to July of 2004. There are many other tales, but these ones are the one that I remember most. Thanks for reading. I am writing about an incident which occurred during my brief stay in Prescott, Arizona. I was in the community college at the time. One night, my friend and I were walking to the local music store. It was about 9 o'clock. The moon was out, but was not full. There was enough light from the moon to see our way around though. We headed down the hill next to the dormitories, and at the bottom of the hill we saw something, but what? We did not know. As we got closer, we saw a form appear out of nowhere. When we reached the bottom of the hill, the light from the moon showed us a man was standing there, an Indian to be exact. The man was dressed in blue jeans, a light blue shirt, and a blue jean jacket. His head rested crooked on his shoulders as though broken. His leg was bent in as though it was broken as well. The area at the bottom of the hill had at one time been the site of a car accident, where a car was hit by an oncoming train, and both inside were killed. Both people inside were Indians. Anyway, we passed the man, and he spoke one word to us, which was hello. We returned his salutation, as nervous as we are. We heard gravel being walked on behind us, and when I looked back, no one was there. There was nowhere the man could have gone without us seeing him walk away. The time between us seeing him and him disappearing was no more than 10 seconds. The strangest part of the whole incident occurred 1 year later. I was in Belgium visiting my parents. One night, I was driving a friend's daughter home from Girl Scouts when standing on the sidewalk I was passing was the Indian. His head was still crooked and his legs were still bent. It surprised me to see him, and when I looked back, he had once again disappeared. I still have yet to find an answer to these strange incidences. There is the chance that I've seen him again in my new home area, Richmond, Virginia, although I'm not sure. But thanks for reading. I've decided to write about my experiences on this website, as I'm hoping that someone will be able to help. I never truly believed in ghosts until I experienced a ghost encounter for the first time about a year ago. Since then, I've had 2 other very bizarre experiences. I was sleeping in the basement at my boyfriend's place with the 2 dogs at the end of the bed. Everyone was sleeping. It was about 3 to 4 a.m. I just woke up in a jump as if someone just had whispered something in my ear. At the same time, the dogs started barking. I thought I had probably just scared them, but at the same time, I felt a presence. I told myself I was half asleep and was just imagining the entire scenario. So I got off the bed to make my way up the stairs, knowing the dogs would just follow me as they always do, but not this time. As I was making my way up the stairs, the dogs had not stopped barking and had actually started to get aggressive. They were both staring at the wall at the head of the bed, growling and gnashing their teeth in a way I'd never seen them do before. It was as if they could sense a presence of harm. I quickly reminded myself that I was probably just still half asleep, so I grabbed one dog under the arm and the other by the collar, and off we went upstairs in another room to sleep. A few months later, again, I was sleeping at my boyfriend's place, but this time alone in his bedroom. I woke up again in a jump and felt something watching me. I glanced in the mirror across the room when I saw an old man looking straight at me. He was dressed in vintage clothes, similar to the leather ceremonial gowns that many Canadian Aboriginal peoples would wear in the past. He had a long braid falling on his right shoulder and blue eyes. At that moment, I just froze and hid under the blankets. I told myself I was probably just half asleep and needed to calm down. I thought to myself, now that you're awake, if you really think this is happening, then check to see if he's still there. So I did, but he was gone. My last bizarre experience confirms the other 2. I know I wasn't sleeping or imagining this. Again, I was sleeping alone in my boyfriend's room. It was last winter, and my alarm clock rang at 6:30 a.m. It was still pitch dark outside. As I pressed the snooze button, I heard footsteps coming up. The footsteps sounded like my boyfriend's father's dress shoes. As the steps were getting closer, I heard the dog who was in the other room slightly bark a few times, so I tried to call out to him. As I attempted to do so, my voice was disappearing. I was feeling more and more pressure to my chest and could not call out. Meanwhile, the footsteps are upstairs and heading towards my room. The closer they got, the more pressure was released to my chest. I could barely breathe. I was so afraid. I put my head under the blankets to calm down. I thought to myself, this can't be happening. I must be having a panic attack, which would explain why I'm having trouble breathing. So, in order to calm down, I tried to take deep breaths and focus on getting calm again, until the footsteps stopped at the end of my bed. I figured I just got scared and imagined the whole thing. So I told myself, just like the last time with the old man, if you think there's something there, then why don't you take a look? As I slightly opened my eyes, something was at the end of the bed. I was too scared to open my eyes fully and look at its face. I glanced at the body. It was standing right at the end of the bed. I could feel it looking at me. I tried to call out, but the pressure from my chest was too intense. I was frozen in fear. The only thing I could think to do was to pray and ask my grandfather, who passed away several years ago, to tell this thing I didn't want to talk to him or make any communication with him. After a few seconds of praying, slowly, the pressure from my chest was released. I looked to see if it was still there, but it had gone. That was my last encounter with a ghost. I get the feeling it's trying to communicate something to me, but I'm too scared to confront it. What should I do? Hi, I ran across your website and I wanted to share a ghost story from my local area. Back when I was in high school, my boyfriend and I decided to go driving through the Joshua Tree National Park out here in Joshua Tree, California. It was really late when we were driving up a winding road towards Key View, a popular lookout spot in the park. We drove past what looked like a Native American man walking towards us as we passed. I told Andrew that we should turn around and see if he needed a ride, so we did. When we drove back, we went a good couple of miles and we didn't see him anywhere. We searched the area for a little while with no trace of the gentleman, so we gave up and just went on our way. We drove past what looked like a Native American man walking towards us as we passed. I told Andrew that we should turn around and see if he needed a ride, so we did. When we drove back, we went a good couple of miles and didn't see him anywhere. We searched the area for a little while with no trace of the gentleman, so we gave up and just went our separate ways. The next day, I called the ranger station at the park to report what I had seen and that there was possibly a lost hiker. Unfortunately, a common occurrence here. They told me that several people had reported the same thing within the past 10 years. It seems that the park was previously home to some of the Native American tribes of California until the settlers began showing up in the 1800s. As a side note to this story, about 6 years ago, I was talking with two of my best friends about strange things we see out here, and my roommate Demita mentioned during a camping trip up by Keys Views, she and some other friends had seen the same Indian man I had seen. Valerie, the other friend there, immediately described the man's clothing and his age, saying she had seen him several times since he had lived up at the gate of the park. I hadn't mentioned my sighting at all until they spoke of it. My first story was one my dad told me. It was in Kingston, Massachusetts. My dad and my uncle were sitting in the newly finished basement. They were talking when my uncle stopped and calmly said, "I just saw an Indian woman with a basket of food on her head walk right through here and through the wall." My dad asked, "What?" My uncle repeated again, remaining serious. This gave my dad goosebumps because my uncle's level-headed and doesn't lie about stuff like that. My second story takes place in Buffalo, New York. I was 8 years old and had been living there for 5 years. It was the night before Halloween. My uncle was visiting. My friends were also there as well. My uncle and dad were inside, and me and my friends, let's call them R and W, were outside in my backyard since it was such a warm night. We were playing around when suddenly the fence door, which was locked up tight, flew open. My friends and I ran inside. We went up and played video games. While my friends were playing, I looked out the window to see something that scared the heck out of me. There was a distinct gray figure of a man who was Native American standing in my backyard. Then the figure turned its head in my direction. Then it disappeared. I wish I would like to live without these experiences, and maybe my uncle as well, because I'm sure it petrified him as much as it did me. Hey guys, it's Phantom here, and I just wanted to say today, well October 16th anyway, I don't know when this video is going to process, so hopefully it's before 12. But anyway, I just wanted to say that it's actually my 2-year anniversary of being on YouTube. It's crazy to think that I've been telling stories on YouTube for this long. And it's even crazier to think that I've been doing them even longer since I've come out of the womb. By the way, if you were born out of a womb, it's a very special procedure. I'll let you know this. Okay, when I was younger, I was born and I came out of the womb. If you guys didn't know that, that's the process of childbirth when you're born out of the womb. So it makes me a special case because I was born out of the womb. I literally came out like a hot potato or a sweet potato pie, whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's something special. I don't know, but I like to think so. Anyway, guys, that's a childbirth story. Maybe I'll continue more of those as the season progresses, but who knows? Anyway, guys, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about anymore. Like I said, I never do, but you know, that's why you guys love me. And you'll get continuously 4 more years of horror narrations that are, you know, filled with my nonsense. And hopefully this video actually did turn out well, because I'm actually worried about it. I'm worried that actually, you know, it sounded okay with the background noise. Why do I keep talking? Anyway, guys, good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and by the way, I'll keep rambling on because I feel like I need to. Just kidding, I'm not going to. Anyway, guys, I'll see you later, and I hope that you have a good night and a good morning, and you know for a fact that you want me to shut up. And I'm going to shut up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.